G'day folks, and welcome to another show. Thanks very much for supporting the channel. It's been really good. I'm getting lots and lots of requests and people giving me ideas and things, giving me their point of views. I love that. Keep them coming in. A lot of questions on visas. I'm going to have to do a whole show just on that, so bear with me. We'll start preparing for that, and we'll just do a whole show on how to enter certain countries. Some are easy, some are difficult. So, but this show, it's about where are we going with international tourism? What's it going to look like in the future? So, let's have a look at that. As you know, 2020 and the pandemic, international travel basically stopped. Some cases, 75 to 80% of international travel just ceased. Borders closed. International tourism just wasn't about anymore. So what's the future? What are we looking at? Let's have a little look-see and see what's possibly the future for tourism anyway, and international travel. If you were one of the millions of people that had interruptions with your travel plans during COVID, you may have booked flights, you might have booked hotels, resorts, that sort of thing, and you're now in credit with those companies or had been paid back. What's the future now? Are we going to be able to travel? Well, the vaccines, has that made that future for us brighter? And is it going to make things different for us in international travel? Does it mean the world of travel and business will return to normal? I'm concerned. I'm not 100% sure that this is the way it's going to be, and will it ever return back to the way it used to be? Let's have a look. So, overseas trips, are they off the cards? Well, not necessarily. It won't be the same though. We won't be travelling to countries nilly-dilly like we used to be able to. We may have to put protocols and things in place. Over the next coming years is going to be the biggie for international travel, and vaccines and vaccinations is going to be huge with the airlines. So, what does this mean? Vaccinations are a major player in the fight to contain the coronavirus, but we shouldn't expect too much too soon. Realistically, it could take years for enough people to get vaccinated to develop the herd immunity that all the countries are looking for. And it's unlikely that every traveller boarding an international flight will be vaccinated. Being vaccinated reduces the chance of getting the symptoms of coronavirus, but it's still unknown whether current vaccines will stop the actual transmission of the virus that causes the illness. Now, I'm quoting this from a document that's been released through some of the world organisations and experts in the coronavirus. So it goes on to say that it's unclear how long the immunity will last. So if we get the vaccination, are we going to be covered for a lifetime? We're not sure. If we get vaccinated, do we have to be vaccinated again the following year? We don't really know. As different viruses and coronaviruses get released into the system, mutation and all that sort of thing, is the current vaccination that we are getting going to be good enough to last us right through? Or are we going to have updates? We're not really sure. And I don't think the experts are 100% sure either. So I can't really quote on that at this stage. But vaccinations is going to be a biggie for international travel. Whether the airlines are going to say, right, for you to come onto our airplane, we want to see proof that you've been vaccinated. And some countries are already looking at this already. You mightn't be able to come into their country unless you've got proof of vaccination. It's a good thing. So imagine you're sitting in an aeroplane and you're not sure who you're sitting next to. But you can be sure that the airlines have made it clear that you cannot enter that aircraft unless you show documentation, proof that you've been vaccinated. That's what I'd like to see. I'd like to be confident that I'm sitting next to someone that's been vaccinated. And if I'm going to go on a 9-hour flight, I'm going to feel pretty good that the airlines have done their best to make sure that everyone that's entered that aircraft has been vaccinated. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And the airline companies I know are looking at this. Vaccinations are a major player in the fight to contain the coronavirus. But we shouldn't expect too much too soon. Realistically, it could take years for enough people to get vaccinated to develop the herd immunity that all the countries are looking for. And it's unlikely that every traveller boarding an international flight will be vaccinated. Being vaccinated reduces the chance of getting the symptoms of coronavirus, but it's still unknown whether current vaccines will stop the actual transmission of the virus that causes the illness. Now, I'm quoting this from a document that's been released through some of the world organisations and experts in the coronavirus. So it goes on to say that it's unclear how long the immunity will last. So if we get the vaccination, are we going to be covered for a lifetime? We're not sure. If we get vaccinated, do we have to be vaccinated again the following year? We don't really know. As different viruses and coronaviruses get released into the system, mutation and all that sort of thing, is the current vaccination that we are getting going to be good enough to last us right through? Or are we going to have updates? We're not really sure. And I don't think the experts are 100% sure either. So I can't really quote on that at this stage. But vaccinations is going to be a biggie for international travel. Whether the airlines are going to say, right, for you to come onto our airplane, we want to see proof that you've been vaccinated. And some countries are already looking at this already. You mightn't be able to come into their country unless you've got proof of vaccination. It's a good thing. So imagine you're sitting in an airplane and you're not sure who you're sitting next to. But you can be sure that the airlines have made it clear that you cannot enter that aircraft unless you show documentation, proof that you've been vaccinated. That's what I'd like to see. I'd like to be confident that I'm sitting next to someone that's been vaccinated. And if I'm going to go on a 9-hour flight, I'm going to feel pretty good that the airlines have done their best to make sure that everyone that's entered that aircraft has been vaccinated. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And the airline companies I know are looking at this. The coronavirus cases have been very high in countries like Brazil, India, the United States, Russia, and the United Kingdom. So at least for the time being, these countries may be off the cards to travel to and travel from. Again, I'm reading from some documentation that's been released to the media. So, this is a good thing that the countries are now talking with each other about their own cases in their own country. Think about it. If you wanted to travel to UK and you had no advice on what the UK was, but then the UK are now saying, our country at the moment has this much coronavirus, think twice about coming into our country, that's a good thing. That's an honesty thing, and I like that. So for the time being, I won't go to the UK because I may have the chance of maybe carrying the coronavirus back to whatever country I go to. So I would think twice about my travel plans or my holiday destinations into some of those countries that are high on the coronavirus level. So if you have a look at some of the other countries, like, let me have a look here. We're looking at places like Singapore, some of the Pacific Islands, New Zealand, Australia, not quite at the moment, you won't be able to get in. But these countries have very low coronavirus levels. So soon we may be able to see bubbles happening between those countries. I know that Indonesia is already negotiating with some of the other countries near them, like Singapore and the Netherlands, the Middle East. They're talking to those countries and they're going to create some sort of a bubble. So that's a good thing. That means that those countries may not have to isolate when they come to Indonesia, and vice versa. Indonesia, say, back to Singapore. You might not have to do that very expensive isolation. You may just have to do a home isolation. And if you've got the vaccines and you've got proof of the vaccines, then that may even be an even better bonus. So, borders are still slammed closed here in Australia, where I am at the moment. And to get out of Australia, it's very difficult to do. You need to have a very good excuse to leave Australia to go into any other countries. You need to have a business, sort of like an idea, apply for a business visa into the country that you're going, which is sometimes easy to do, sometimes it's difficult. I'm going to do a show on that, actually, on visas and entries into different countries and things, and exiting Australia at the moment is very difficult. We do have a bubble going at the moment with New Zealand and Australia, transgender type thing. You can fly back and forwards without any sort of problems. Is that going to open up more? Well, possibly. We might be looking at the Pacific nations like Fiji, those sort of places. That bubble might extend out to those. Coming into Australia from outside of the world, very difficult to do. Talk to an agent. Go onto the Australian government website, have a look at the Home Affairs page and see what requirements that you may need to come into Australia. It still is possible, but it's not as easy as that it used to be. Australia is also looking at bringing over some foreign work exchange students. That's a possibility, coming over into Australia, working on some of our farms. They are looking at that and they are opening up visas for that. I'm not 100% sure how that system works. Talk to an agent, give them a call and see what they've got to say about this. But it is happening, I just don't know anything about it. As the virus becomes more contained and borders around the world are starting to open, you need to keep an eye on the countries that you're interested in. Have a look at their websites. They update regularly on what's going on in their countries. A lot of people send me a lot of questions asking me about different things. There's so many different countries and their own different regulations and rules, it's hard to keep up with. I am going to try and slowly open up some different shows, say like the Philippines, the Thailand, those type of countries. But it takes time because I've got to get the documentation through and it's got to be correct before I quote on it. So keep an eye on those countries that you want to go into. There's lots and lots of information available through those government websites and they're very easy to Google and have a look at. That's what I do. When I wanted to go into Indonesia, I just went onto the Indonesian website and had a good read. Then I got hold of an Indonesian agent and they helped me through the process. Then I had a look at the Australian exit rules through the Home Affairs page there and I worked it all out by myself and it was pretty easy to do. Now I have a visa to get into Indonesia. You're gonna have to do yourself a risk analysis, I guess, if you want to leave your country and into another country. You need to take into consideration a few things. Have a look at the coronavirus levels. Have a look how easy it is to get into that country. Also, you need to look at things like insurance. Are you going to be covered, or can you even get insurance to go into that country? Because you're going to want to be covered. Another couple of things you're going to have to look at is when you come back to your country, what sort of isolation you're going to have to do, whether you've got the vaccines or not, and also entering into that country. Some countries may not require you to do a stay. Some countries may ask for 5 days, some countries may ask for 14 days, and they may ask you to stay in a government approved hotel. So you need to take those things into consideration. Have a look at insurance. That's a biggie. What the insurance company is going to cover you when you enter that new country. What are you covered for? Have a look at that. You're going to have to start Googling and have a little look-see. I am going to do a show on insurances and where they're up to in the industry. I have contacted some of the major insurance companies, and I'm waiting for them to send me all their documentation so I can quote on what some of the insurance companies are doing. Because at the moment, some of the insurance companies aren't working at all. They will not cover you for tourism. They'll cover you for business, but they won't cover you for a holiday at this stage. That's some of the insurance companies that I have made contact with. But as I said, I'm waiting for them to give me some documentation, and then I can quote on what some of these insurance companies are offering, when they're going to reopen again, how that system's going to work. Because again, it's a new industry for them as well. Because of COVID, a lot of those companies had to close down and just reconsider all their policies. But they are starting to look at it again. Some of the borders around the world are opening, so will some of the insurance companies to those countries. Stay tuned on that one, because that's going to be a big show, and it is very important. You do need insurance when you go into a country, whether it's for business or holiday. As I say goodbye, and thank you very much for listening to this small show on some of the travel things that you may have to consider when traveling and the way travel is going to happen in the future. But bear in mind that some of the airline companies may ask you for documentation on vaccination. This is not new. Even some countries are asking for this right now. So be prepared to be asked for vaccination documentation from your country. We're doing it here in Australia, and it's going to be like a little passport thing, I think, so, or it'll be connected to our passport somehow, I believe. So, bear that in mind. Look, thanks very much for watching. Everything that I've mentioned today has been quoted. You can Google it and find it on the internet, so I'm not making it up. It is things that's out there, and it is coming from reliable sources. Thank you very much for watching. I'm the Aussie Traveller, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks very much for watching.